So once it's time to start your leaven, which is the step before you actually make the dough, you add a 1/2 cup of flour, a 1/3 cup of room temperature water, and then a tablespoon of your starter. The starter is very happy right now. It's all bubbly and springy and gross looking. So gross. Okay. And you stir it up and it will be really thick. Like a batter. Thanks, Conrad. And then put a towel over it and check it in the morning. The next morning, the leaven looks like this. It has bubbles all through it and it's spread out. It's not going to look like the starter because it's so thick. Then you're going to add 2 cups of room temperature water. And then you're going to stir it with your hands and kind of break up some of the bigger clumps, but it's still going to be lumpy, which is okay. There's some pieces that got a little dried out. It doesn't matter, it won't affect the dough. So at the end it should be, still have some lumps floating, but it'll look like almond milk or something. So as soon as the water's mixed in, you're gonna add 5.5 cups of flour. Four, 5, and 1/2. Then you're going to stir it together until all the flour is incorporated. It takes a minute. It's about ready. It's gonna look really dry and shaggy. It's not gonna be a pretty dough yet. Now that's done, you're gonna let it sit like this with a towel over it for at the least 30 minutes to an hour, but at the most 4 hours. The longer the better. This is called the autolyse stage, and this is when it is forming all of the really good gluten. So the longer you leave it, the better. It's gonna end up with a chewier bread and all the things that make sourdough so good. Okay, so now it's been 4 hours, a little over actually, because I missed it. You're going to add salt to the dough by first making salt water. So add a tablespoon of salt, I prefer kosher, but anything you have will work, into a 1/4 cup of water, again room temperature, and then I just stir it with my finger until it's dissolved. If you're using a clear dish, it's a little easier to see when it's completely dissolved, but that should do it. Once you don't feel the grains of salt on the bottom of the bowl anymore, you know you got it. Then you're gonna pour the salt water over the dough. And then you're gonna do this, incorporating the salt water. And the reason you don't add the salt till after the stage, the autolyse stage, is because the addition of salt or sugar, if you were doing pizza dough or whatever, will retard the yeast, so you have to wait until it's had that opportunity. Okay, so once that's done, you're now starting your folding stage, like immediately as soon as you've incorporated the water. Okay, so the folds, you're gonna fold it 4 times by stretching the dough up and folding over. Turn it a quarter, pull up, fold over. Each time you fold it, it's gonna get a little harder to make it stretch as it just gets thicker, but that's okay. And your final turn. And this is instead of kneading. This dough never gets kneaded at all. And you're gonna let that sit for 30 minutes, and you're gonna fold it again every half hour for a total of 6 folds. So you'll be folding every 30 minutes for 2.5 hours. Okay, so I just wanted to show, this is halfway through the folds. I'm starting the 4th fold right now. You can see the dough is getting smoother. And this is a good one. It's very, feels springy. You can actually see little air bubbles. And I can actually feel them pop as I'm folding them, which obviously I would rather them not pop, but it's gonna happen. So 2 more folds to go. That's halfway through.
Go.
Okay, so here's the last fold. It's been 2.5 hours since I started. It's very bubbly. It's extremely difficult to fold at the end, so it's kind of like I'm just rolling it at this point. So now this is just gonna sit for 30 minutes to an hour, however you're feeling on time, and then we will take it out and start to shape it. Okay, so now it's time to turn your dough out onto a floured surface. And that looks very big and happy. So the next thing you're gonna do is find a pastry cutter. Pause it. Okay, once you have found your pastry cutter that your family members put in the wrong drawer, you're going to flour it, and we're gonna split it in 2. That is my husband's text noise, which is Darth Vader breathing. Okay, you're gonna split it down the middle. And at this stage, you're just gonna loosely shape it and then let it rest for about 20 minutes. And to do that, you kind of brace it with one hand and push it with the other, going in a circle until it's round-ish. And the reason you're doing it like this and not just rolling it up is because you want to be really gentle with sourdough. It's not as hardy as an active yeast. It's not just going to fly back up. Okay, so now it's time to shape the loaves. And I'll just show you one. Sprinkle a little flour on top. Take your pastry scraper, flip it over. And then you're going to shape it by doing something really similar to the folds. You're going to go this way, and then you go back in the same direction you just folded in. And then it's just clumsy when the dough is this. So you're gonna have the seam side down. This way you get a smooth top on your loaf when you bake it. I'm putting it into a proofing basket. If you don't have proofing baskets, ask me. There is an alternative. And, well, actually, don't flour it yet. And then I'm gonna put a little bit, of plastic wrap over it. And at this point, depending on what time of day it is, you have 2 options. You either let it rise for about 3 hours before baking, or you can put it in your refrigerator overnight, and that works great too. And you can bake it straight from there. But just put a little saran wrap loosely over the top and let it get happy. Okay, so now the loaves are Big and risen. I actually let them be in the fridge overnight because it just got too late last night to be up baking. So the Dutch oven is in the oven right now at 500 degrees. And now I will put them in. Okay. So before I put it in, I'm gonna dust the top with flour. And then I don't have one of those lovely little things to score the loaf, so I just use the sharpest knife I have. I like to do one on the side. It's just my preference. And I'll do little lines going like that. I'm gonna open the Dutch oven, which as you can see is incredibly hot. I'm gonna lift this gently as possible, place it in as quick as possible, get the lid back on. And then get this in. And I'm gonna bake it at 500 for 20 minutes. And then in 20 minutes, all I'm gonna do is just turn the heat down to 450 and let that bake like that for 10 minutes, and then I'll show you what's next. Okay, so now it's at 450. It has been for 10 minutes. And all I have to do now is take off the lid. And then now we get to see it. And then I'm gonna let it bake until it gets as dark as I'd like. So, okay, it's ready.